many of you, I understand, are happy students or are students, maybe working with research and so on, we still need to generate more knowledge and disseminate that. I mean, we need proof of what are the problems when it comes to social justice, and then what are the solutions, how we're going to go about. So, I mean, this is the third central means of intervention. And then on the horizontal lines, you see the thematics of the coalition. What is the coalition supposed to work with? Which are the main themes? We heard in Anita's presentation already many of the key problems, and I think they coincide very well with what is decided for the coalition, whether it being from forced labor to migration issues, economic development in general. You see on the horizontal lines what we should be aiming at doing together in the coalition. And the partners have started now discussions on this. We've had online, as we are on all the continents, online discussions, and I hope, as said, in June we will see more results on this. And these are, of course, extremely big challenges and topics that we're talking about. Just the question of the first one, inequality, discrimination, and exclusion. I mean, there are a lot of ways to define inequality. We can talk about horizontal, vertical inequality. We can talk about the inequality within societies or between societies. And then, of course, we should be talking about how to reduce those inequalities. But these are very complex issues, and I unfortunately cannot promise you that by June we will have the answers on all of those. But it is also for the coalition, for the years to come, then to come up, the partners to come up with new solutions and new partnerships to tackle these challenges. But as said, already 250 very, very enthusiastic partners. So I'm looking forward to many of these discussions, and also to see the tangible result. The coalition is in motion, and all of you around the world, whether you're already decision makers or still studying or whatever you're doing, there's a lot of room to look at within these thematics and others, to partner and to look at how we should go about. We don't have all the answers, and therefore I'm asking also from you what we should do in order to include better the youth in this endeavor. How we can, if there would be a campaign, would be sharing, what would be something, contents that you would like to share, what would be the challenge that you'd like to meet, and also when it comes to academic institutions, what would be the best ways for us to cooperate and get on board the most important ones. As this is, as said, we're open to discussion, and we'd really like to hear your views, because the quest of social justice is a common for all of us, and I trust you in the global south and others in the global north, and then triangularly together we'll be addressing this in the best possible way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anton, and I think you have already responded to one of the questions that we had, that is, which are the requirements and the benefits for joining the Global Coalition. I think a lot of this information is available in the Global Coalition website, and I will ask also my colleagues to maybe put this as well in the chat box. And by the way, in the chat box we also had several links to the South-South work that the ILO is doing, so you can get there, have more information. Maybe one question now to Anita, and I think it would be interesting to hear also your views, Anton. What strategies can be employed to ensure that South-South and triangular cooperation initiatives are inclusive and equitable, particularly in terms of benefiting marginalized communities and promoting their active participation? Anton was making reference to the first thematic priority of the Global Coalition about inequality. Now we will also launch a poll at the same time, so that our students can also respond a little bit, our participants, to these thematics, to the different themes of the Global Coalition. But in the meantime, Anita, let us hear from you. How can South-South and triangular cooperation really target the most vulnerable? Maybe you can give us some examples also of past days. This is a question from Etienne Sabuera. So, for you.
Very relevant to hold this session today, and the approach that I can share is one that emanates from my diplomatic background. And let me just at the outset also say that I'm participating in my personal capacity or my academic capacity rather than representing any particular professional or academic affiliation that I do have. And given that even your program on future leaders will also tackle knowledge and skills, it is course analysis or a content analysis approach. And given that you have selected this very distinguished panel, and very, very happy to also greet the audience, which cuts across all the continents of the South and probably of the whole world, let us coin today with you, Stefan, two new terms, which I will be using in my intervention: the multilateral global South and the minilateral global South. And by the multilateral global South, I don't think that term has been used before, but I think it has relevance, and hence I would expect it actually to be more or less mainstreamed through the audience and the participants today. And the most maybe large and important actor in the multilateral global South is the G77, which after all is the actually largest coalition and bloc in the United Nations and in multilateralism. And if we do a content analysis of this multilateral global South, basically the G77, we can more or less focus on two levels, and that's what I did thinking and brainstorming about this very interesting session that you're convening, one at the political level and one at more of the technical level. So I looked at the two main documents, the latest two main documents of the G77. One is the Third South Summit Outcome Document, which was convened in January of 2024, and just a few months before the Ministerial Declaration of the G77 in September 2023. These are the two latest documents of the South, the multilateral global South, that were adopted lately. I looked for social justice. And believe it or not, colleagues, there was no mention of social justice. There was mention of justice in the case, particularly in issues related to Palestine and the International Court of Justice, but there was no mention of social justice. Yet, there were many references to social. And that gives us an idea of how the normative framework, the policy framework of the Global South, what it thinks its priorities are. And by doing so, we can further promote and we can anchor more deeply and maybe more centrally social justice that we're discussing today. There was lots of mention of economic and social development, of social safety nets, of social, economic and political processes, of social protection systems, and economic, social and environmental impact of climate change. That's particularly in the summit of the South, which basically is the summit of the G77, convened in January 2024 in Uganda. If we look at the ministerial declaration issued after the meeting took place in New York, we would still find mentions of economic and social environmental. We will find so economic, social, environmental areas or fields, dimensions, needs, challenges, terms. So this is more or less how the multilateral global South is thinking about and it's pronouncing itself from these positions. So I would hence strongly advocate that when we look at social justice, we relate it to economic and social and environmental areas, dimensions, needs, challenges, terms, or even social cohesion, stability, integration, psychological development, especially when it relates to migrants, peace, and children. That is more or less the perspective that the Global South leaders are adopting. Add to it maybe social impacts, social and economic determinants, and social protection, social services, social and economic conditions. So as we see, although the term itself is not used, when we unpack social justice and we look at the social aspect, these are the references, these are the conceptual terminology that is used by the Global South leaders at the level of heads of states or ministers of foreign affairs. Now, the other document that I looked at is the statement of the Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development of Uganda, speaking at the Commission of Social Development. So that's more on the sectoral or thematic level, not at the political level. We find that in her statement in February 2024, and it's the last statement available, there is mention of social justice, I think twice, but in reference to multilateral processes and UN processes, particularly the theme of the Commission on Social Development for this year, which actually is fostering social development and social justice through social policies, and reference to the World Summit for Social Development in 1995 and how it included the promotion of equality and social justice. So I think in our brainstorming today and in our thinking ahead, once again, we need to make that link between our conception of social justice and those other dimensions of social development and the social cohesion that I have just mentioned. Has this always been the case, Stefano? Apparently not, which is a little bit I don't want to say worrying or concerning, but should be noted that earlier G77 documents used to clearly refer, for example, and I will quote in 2001, it said that the ultimate goal of social development, and in fact the test for success for any social policy, should be judged from the vantage of achieving social justice and equity. A similar wording also was used in 2009. So apparently there is a little bit of a shift in the discourse, a shift in the terminology that we need to be aware and address accordingly. Now we come to the minilateral Global South, and I don't think also that term has been used before, so maybe it can be coined through your very interesting session. And we look at the BRICS as a case study. Its latest summit was in South Africa, August 2023. Now we see a clear mention of social justice. And I quote, it says, "We reaffirm our commitment to respect, promote, and realize decent work for all, and to achieve social justice." That does not mean that they did not address the other more frequently used terminology and concepts that the 77 have used, like social and economic development, like social protection policies, like socially sustainable and inclusive economies, like social economic development, again, and so on and so forth. They do. But they clearly mention in paragraph 38 this commitment to respect decent work to achieve social justice. So it's interesting that when it gets into a more limited membership framework, that target, that goal, that objective is clearly mentioned. Now, I promised you that I would also address a bit of Africa, and I looked at the latest outcome of the Assembly of the Union of the African Union that was convened in Addis Ababa in February 24. Once again, not a single mention of social justice. Quite a few mentions of justice, but again, really as it relates to Palestine, to the ICJ. But look what comes in the African discourse: reparatory justice. So linking justice to the very unique experience that Africa has gone through, particularly through the transatlantic slave trade and the long era of colonialism. And here Africa reasserts itself that the issue of justice has a very particular meaning for Africa, particularly as it relates to reparations and the like. When we unpack the term once again and we look at social, now once again we come to social cohesion, to social development, to social protection systems, to social capital, and to social effects of other phenomena. So I think we really need at this level maybe to go on a bird's eye view and to look at it from a big picture and to see what are the normative and conceptual and policy feed in the social justice principles and elements into that discourse. Because as I think the students will come and join you in this summer for the future leaders, you will see that this normative framework, that these policy documents actually shape the discourse, set the agenda, and by doing so can really impact operational activities on the ground through triangular projects such as the very impressive list that ILO has issued in many of its documents. So that's what I wanted to share maybe with you from that diplomatic perspective, content analysis, discourse analysis, particularly moderator, as this year is a celebration year for the multilateral global south, as the G77 celebrates its 60 years. And I'm actually by coincidence organizing a roundtable at the Academic Council for UN Studies as this annual meeting on that. 60 years is no age for retirement for the global south. Actually, it's age for maturity and for launching a new phase. And I think through the bright minds and the youth spirit of all the participants here, we can launch that new agenda, including through most engaging activities like the ones that you're organizing. I thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And I think your words resonate a lot with the work that we are doing at ILO and at ITC ILO in particular on capacity building. And I think your speech was really great. I like this idea that the South-South cooperation is a key contributor to the global reflection on such topics as social justice. Framing, reframing maybe also some of the concepts. And I think this is also very important to keep in mind that there is no passivity here. There is more proactivity. There is more also, let's say, common reflection through South-South in order to give new impetus to some of the potentially also the old agendas. I like very much, of course, your passage on reparatory justice and how also this connects to social justice. And maybe, this word reparatory gave me also the hint for one of the questions. Mohsen Abilti is asking what mechanisms are in place to ensure sustainability while promoting social justice. And I would like also to launch the second poll because there are also some potential, let's say, entry points on sustainability. How can we promote together social justice and sustainability, seeing this from your diplomatic perspective?
Now, I think multilateral frameworks and particularly international organizations are probably the best suited to undertake such a task. We really need to revive multilateralism, especially with the challenges that it's facing at the moment. And we have a number of parent bodies and subsidiary bodies which are focused particularly on such topics. So commissions such as the Social Development Commission and its meetings, ILO, specialized agencies, and also at the level of regional organizations are probably excellent platforms through which a multi-stakeholder approach can further promote the agenda and translate the policy documents, the normative framework into activities on the ground. So once again, I would strongly encourage the students, the viewers, to engage in the different roles and capacities and competences that they may have in this course shaping activities through multilateral framework, including at the regional level when need be and when applicable.
Thank you very much.
Of the South-South, maybe longer, anniversary of South-South cooperation movement. At the Institute, we have mid-career officers from what you now popularly call the Global South, but by continent, Africa, certainly Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Central Eastern Europe, and Latin America, and even the Pacific Islands. So we have featured participants, we call them young scholars, from some 47 countries. The language of instruction is in English, and it's a degree awarding program. Certainly, we teach Chinese experiences in dealing with domestic and international issues. It's multidisciplinary in terms of it being economics and political science and philosophy. But it's not a program where we showcase supposedly unique Chinese culture or Chinese so-called wisdom, but it's where we try to apply fact-based and also theory, not fact-based inquiry into public policy domestically and also interaction internationally. Now, the International Labour Organization actually has a history of, even though our institute's history is very short, of interacting with them. I do believe, I haven't double-checked, we have at least 3 graduates who studied in our program but are now who are working at various offices of the ILO. So in that regard, I felt I had some confidence when I received the invitation to join you. Now, my understanding, I'm an academic person, it's the first time for me to be on this program, of the value of the ILO is that it serves a very useful function in terms of advocacy for social justice, for the eradication of child labor and other forms of abuse, but does so in a non-threatening way through consultations and what you call partnership. China as a country is not officially has not officially ratified the UN Covenant on social rights yet. It has done it on economic rights, but nevertheless, to the extent I know, China contributes to the ILO's activities, including throughout setting up some of the funds for South-South cooperation. That's another. The second, if I had a point, is that I was quite impressed today upon listening that having your emphasis on social justice as SDG Goal 8. Now, the SDG is almost completely forgotten in realms of discussion that are either organized by interests more closely aligned with the global north or by research efforts that advocate promotion of interests of global north. After the SDG document came into being in 2015, for many of the developed economies, or high-income economy, SDG was put on the shelf. But on the other hand, SDG does serve as a very strong, rigorous, thought out basis for collaboration among what we may call the global south. Now, moving on to that, there is a bit of a challenge as we see of the UN system. In some ways, the UN-based systems is being sidelined one way or another, due to a good degree to the so-called big power rivalry or competition. And that's what makes the work by UN-based institutions, including the ILO, quite pertinent. Why? This actually has to do earlier. Our ambassador did a good, thorough content analysis, justice, social justice development, right? But he found out the social justice was seldom mentioned. But actually, as I do at least in teaching, the whole notion of development as it's presented in English can mean you have, a built-in notion of intervention, certainly backed with concessionary loans or sometimes technical assistance, intervention by the North in the South, or if it's market-based, it has to be capitalist, and that oftentimes brings in conflicts in terms of, let's say, meeting the aspirations on the part of the disadvantaged, and also on the part of those who are on the lower ladders of technology and lower ladders who have fewer access to information, and today we call it data or the basic services. So the challenge here, as I see it, that has to do with added value of South-South cooperation, what you may call triangular cooperation. Has its own sales point in terms of, let's say, representation, in terms of, a form of endorsement, or in terms of a linkage between North and South. But there's still an issue of whose initiative matters, whose initiative counts, what is the benchmark for success or for excellence. I have noticed my 7 minutes is up for getting up, but I would really I would really encourage the program you are organizing to think about more than just advocacy, to think about more than, let's say, saying best practices. And one of the very important elements facing all societies at different levels of income, different levels of growth, again, going back to what I said, development as a notion can be contentious, to think about the power of technology, how harnessing the technology rather than just getting, the deliveries of emergency aid or food or attention or appeal. So in other words, one way as I see it, at least from a professor's point of view, is empowerment through knowledge diffusion or technology diffusion. In other words, international organizations, universities play a role in spreading the knowledge, spreading the skills, and those knowledge and skills can be patented. They can have the exclusive rights according to the laws and the norms of modern capitalism. But at the same time, the real emancipation for the disadvantaged, for those, especially the youth in the global South, will have to come from mastery of modern technologies. On that note, maybe I should stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. And I think the challenge is taken. So it's not just about sharing good practices or best practices, but it's also about norm construction. And I think this is really the challenge that we have. And that's why we also turn ourselves towards the youth leaders in the Global South. Because As you said, it's a matter of creating new concepts. It's a matter of developing new concepts. It's a matter of also being context-specific, context-related. We can also assess the different situations from our chat box where our inspiring participants are sharing real-life examples. Many of them are both students but also engaged with civil society organizations, NGOs that are directly involved in service delivery and also in training and capacity building of young people in the field. So I think it's very important to have this perspective that, Professor, you share with us of the fact that those concepts are concepts that are in evolution and that young people have a strong say in order to create and co-create these new norms. And I think this is a very important point where we want to close a little bit the expert remarks and going towards the last 5 to 10 minutes of our webinar. I would like to pass the floor over to my colleague, Carlotta Clivio, for some burning questions or reflections, but also looking at the future and looking at, let's say, the next steps in terms of the future of work, South-South and Triangular Cooperation Network, and Samoa University. So, Carlotta, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you for the floor and for the excellent facilitating of this very inspiring webinar. It's my pleasure to be here and to have been part of the team welcoming all of these experts all in one place. It's really a truly special moment. Let me share my screen perhaps to briefly, well, with a reminder first that anyone connected, should you have burning questions that either need addressing, specifically related to the remarks that you've heard from Ambassador Al-Baweli or from Professor Jha, there's still a little bit of time. I think we'll have about 1 or 2 minutes to take care of those as well. And I thank my colleagues who are also sorting through all of your questions at the speed of light. But with that caveat there, let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Carlotta Clivio. I'm Associate Program Officer of the Development and Investment Program at the ITC-ILO, and I'm coordinator of Integro, which is the Global Competence Development Facility for future leaders in the world of work, exploring the social dimension of sustainable development here at the ITC-ILO. This is where mission-driven leaders meet, regardless of whether their professional pathway will take them in the broader space of multilateralism, in the social and solidarity economy, or in the private sector. And I like how we ended the expert remarks on empowerment through knowledge diffusion, because we are in the process of establishing, building, expanding, as our Master of Ceremonies, Stefano Merante, has just explained. We are establishing the Future of Work South and Triangular Cooperation University Network, which is really designed as a place for us to achieve just what has been highlighted throughout today's webinar. Many of you I've seen sorting through the chat are members we have welcomed before, Professor Anna Cafarena, helping us with really unpacking how the future of the world of work may look like across European and Chinese contexts. She was focusing in particular on Sino-EU relations, but this doesn't mean that this is our only area of focus. We invite all of members of faculty that are interested in global self-development priorities, triangular cooperation, but also South-South cooperation initiatives and activities, and essentially human-centered development, right? If any of perhaps your research or any concrete project that you're curating is an important stepping stone toward advancing human-centered development, then the university network is the place for you. We welcome any contact you may wish to make with us, and we look forward to keeping in touch. Now, you may ask reasonably, what's in it for younger people? What can the university network bring to the students that many of the faculty members connected with us today have in their classes and the ones that they mentor and they guide in their academic journey? Well, what we have is a concrete activity, not just of course, the Insight series that I'm very happy that we launched today with this wonderful webinar. We also have an activity running in the summer. It's the Future Leaders in the World of Work Summer University. It will be taking place in between the 29th of July and 9th of August, and take you to Turin, our campus of the ITC-ILO in Turin, but also Geneva with a study visit that we'll be conducting right at the beginning of August. The students coming here, we would really like to transform the ITC-ILO in the sounding board for young voices that elaborate concrete proposals by youth and for youth on what the future of the world of work could look like. And while we have 2030 as our goalpost set by the 2030 agenda, we would like to provoke some discussions as to how the future of the world of work will look like post-2030 also. We will do this with the help of ITC-ILO, ILO-UN experts, and a cohort of faculty members that will guide you through 6 core thematic areas, 4 of which we are exploring in the Insight series, in these webinars, of which, of course, Stefano will let you know more about. And with this, I'll leave my